long time, I was really bad at car parking. Men have better spatial awareness, I'd say to myself, when my woeful manoeuvring left the car sticking out a metre from the curb. But 3 years of living in the space-starved inner city changed all that. In my home suburb, car parks were as rare as diamonds, so you get very good at making the most of those teeny bits of bitumen. Since there was never a man to call upon, and I had to learn to do it myself. And given the rarity of car parks, I got a lot of practice. Neuroscience tells us that men are generally better at car parking. They seem to specialise in using a different area of the brain, so fare better in activities involving spatial skills. It's also why men can often read maps better than women. There seems to be other differences between us too. You may have heard some of them. Women, they say, are better at relationships, while men are better at decision making. Women are nurturing and emotional. Men are strong and protective. These are stereotypes, and they have their usefulness. There's a reason why they develop the way they do. Stereotypes help us to understand one another. They give us a language and a framework to draw upon so that we can work with one another. But stereotypes such as these can also be damaging. Those neatly packaged labels can become an excuse for poor behaviour. They can act as an unseen force that keeps us in our place of weakness. That is, we don't learn to park our car because the stereotype says that we're not supposed to be able to. A better question to ask is, what type does God call us into? What expectations does God have about men and women and what they should be like? Sometimes our stereotyping can be negative. That was certainly the case on me as a woman. God called me to be a leader, but I'd always fit the stereotype that women were weak and soft and passive. What did it mean to be a strong woman leader? It was very confusing for me, and I was encouraged by other women in Scripture who had broken through the cultural stereotypes of their day, people like Deborah and Esther and Junia and Priscilla. And it encouraged me to keep pursuing the type that God had for me. We also see the effects of stereotyping on men, the negative consequences that sometimes keep them in the box. I remember a friend of mine began a men's ministry, and he said how difficult it was because men were comfortable discussing their putting technique or the footy scores, but they couldn't be vulnerable and they couldn't talk about their relationships easily, the issues they had in their lives, the addictions and the problems, because they were supposed to be strong. Men, after all, don't cry. But that label stopped them moving forward in the journey of healing and wholeness. So, what does God say? What is the God type? You know, God from the beginning of creation created humanity, man and women, male and female, in God's image to reflect him together. And so when we think about, well, what should men and women be like? We can use our differences not to separate, but to learn from each other. When men can learn from women about how to open up in relationships, and women can learn from men how to be stronger in their leadership. And both of us, irrespective of our gender, can look to the God type, the one that is seen most perfectly in Jesus, who confounds both and all of the stereotypes. He cried at tombs, after all. He gathered children in his lap. He said, "Put down your swords." And yet he was bold to speak truth to power and to bear suffering with incredible strength. The goal is to be like Jesus. You see, society has the stereotype, but Jesus has the God type. We are all called, irrespective of whether we're male or female, to be transformed into his likeness. Hey, thanks for listening to Everyday God Conversations today. For more on having your own God conversation, go to godconversations.com.